Well, welcome everyone to the Positive Pregnancy and Birth Planning webinar. My name is Shari Lyon. I will go through and introduce myself in a moment, but I'm going to be sharing some slides with you today. Still got everyone sharing where they're from, which is beautiful. Thank you for coming on live. I really wanted to share this information with you tonight in the hope that it helps you on your journey to bringing a baby into the world. And I'm super excited to share this because a lot of the time when I actually do work with couples, I only really get to see them around about between that 20 to 35 week mark. And by that time, many of you have already made some of the most important decisions when it comes to pregnancy and also preparing for your birth. So I'm just going to be going through my slides here. Let me just get them so make sure that they're working. Okay, so tonight I'm going to try as much as possible to keep within 90 minutes. We will have times that you can ask questions as well. Please maybe just refrain from asking your questions. If you have anything specific, if you could just maybe write it down, and then we're going to have a allocated time to ask questions. And that's both to myself as well as L2, which I'll introduce her shortly. So tonight I want to share as much of my knowledge as possible with you. And I come from a place of, I wish I had something like this to turn to, or that someone shared this kind of information with me when I had my children. So, sorry, I'm getting a lot of dinging. Let me see if I can just turn that off. I don't really know why or who, what's, 1 second. Okay. Wow, we've almost got 100 of you on. That's beautiful. So tonight, I want to share some tips with you about some things for those of you who are maybe planning on having a baby, or you want to start trying, things that I recommend, as well as we're going to just recommend a few things that you can consider before you even start trying. Also, how you can optimize your health and your mindset before pregnancy and also for pregnancy. And I really want to share as much information as possible with you about your options when it comes to medical caregivers, the different types of model of care when you are pregnant, and that it's even important to consider looking at those options now, even before you start trying and falling pregnant. I also want to share with you the importance of knowing your birth options. And once again, your preference, what's available, and preparing for your birth through good education. And that's kind of really my expertise as a childbirth educator. Also, I'm going to just be explaining to you what hypnobirthing is and what it isn't, because I know that there are probably many of you who maybe you've never even heard of hypnobirthing. Maybe you have heard of hypnobirthing, but maybe think it's some hippie woo-woo way of giving birth. So I just want to kind of set some things straight. And that's even for birth partners. So I hope that even some of you have invited your partners on tonight. I think it's a really great opportunity for birth partners to, or dads, or your partner, whoever it is you want to start your family with, is going to gain a lot of information as well from tonight too. Please know, though, that this information shared tonight in this webinar should not be interpreted as medical advice. This webinar is intended for informational purposes only, and please always consult your healthcare professional. Please know that I am not medically trained, and nowhere throughout this webinar will I be giving medical advice. This is information that is readily available, but if I do get any questions that airs on that medical advice, please know that I will encourage you to write it down and go and talk to your caregiver. And this is also actually what this webinar is about, for you to gain some confidence about even what questions to ask medical caregivers when it comes to the options that are available for you when you are trying to conceive, whilst you're pregnant, and even birth and post-birth as well. So let's get into it. Who am I? My name's Shari. I am located on the Gold Coast in Australia. It is the most beautiful place to live. It is a holiday destination, and I feel very blessed. It's actually raining here at the moment, so it's not that beautiful at the moment. But I am a certified Hypnobirthing Australia and Hypnobubs practitioner. And I'm a childbirth educator, basically. So I teach childbirth education classes. And I have been awarded in the top 3 practitioners by Hypnobirthing Australia for the last 6 years running. And I've just last year actually was awarded the top award, so the Practitioner of Excellence Award. So I'm really I'm proud to say that I'm one of the leading hypnobirthing practitioners in Australia. Now, last year really opened me up to connecting with so many more of you from all over the world. And I was actually amazed I know COVID was, and it's still happening. There's still a lot of restrictions on many people when it comes to the coronavirus. But one thing that I saw was it was an opportunity for me to really reach out and share this information with more of you. And I've become quite confident with using Zoom. And I'm now sharing the courses that I teach through live online webinars to couples all over the world. I'm scheduling courses for different time zones. So no matter where you are in the world, I really hope that this information speaks to you and that you can use the information, or it inspires you to want to learn more. And that's really one of my main whys. I also am the host of the Nurture Hub Pregnancy and Birth podcast. So that is a whole nother resource that I highly recommend you go and find on iTunes or Spotify. Go and subscribe to it. I have a beautiful co-host, Nicola Lay. Her and I, we love sharing about birth and connecting with women. And you'll also find a lot of information at that podcast too. But I truly believe that pregnancy and birth should and it can be a positive experience for all of you, because it is one time in your life that you will always remember. And I notice this even no matter who I talk to, even the older generation, they always remember and share their birth stories with me when they hear what I do. So what my purpose and my why, I truly believe my wife being here on this earth is to show you all what pregnancy and birth can be like, especially birth. Like for me, obviously the passion is helping you prepare for a positive birth, because the statistics, especially here in Australia, show that 1 in 3 women suffer from birth trauma. And none of us should come out of our birth feeling traumatized. Now, I'm not saying that things can't happen and things can't arise, but that's where the reason why I want to do what I do is also because sharing from my own experience and sharing from my own story, I had huge fears of birth. To be honest, I'd never really planned or thought about having a baby or becoming pregnant. It did happen unexpectedly for me. And when I found out I was pregnant, it was a big, I guess, this whole heap of anxiety started to come over me, because I had a huge fear of birth. I had a fear of pain. I kept telling myself this same story, that I had a low pain threshold, but then I had this huge fear of needles as well. So I was in this predicament of going, well, I don't want to go through what I hear of the pain of birth, but I don't want to have the needles either. And it was through my own journey and really kind of my own awakening of realizing that only I could create my own experience. And I realized how much I didn't know, and that I couldn't really rely on anyone else to tell me. I had to go and source the information myself. If I wanted to have a particular experience, I had to take the initiative to find out the information. And that's why I'm so happy that all of you are here, because I'm guessing you're all the same. You kind of, there's this saying that there are things that you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. But when you know you don't know something, that's when you can find out the information and source the information. So that's where tonight, myself and also my beautiful sister, Elle, we want to share as much information as possible to help you no matter what stage you're at, whether you are thinking of having a baby, whether you are trying to conceive, whether you're already pregnant, or even if you're close to bringing a baby into the world. I really hope that this webinar is going to give you some valid information to help guide you into wanting to learn more, basically. So I want to introduce straight up my beautiful sister. Elle, are you there? Let me unmute you. Oops.
Hi, everyone.
So Elle, could you please just share with everyone here tonight who is live who you are and even share a little bit about your journey and your story?
Absolutely. So I am Shari's younger sister, and I'm currently living up in Gladstone, where Shari used to live as well. We're trying to get back down to the Gold Coast. It's a work in progress at the moment. So I'm a qualified naturopath and herbalist. So I've been qualified for 4 years now. I'm a mother and a infertility warrior, and I'm proud of all of those titles. So like Shari, last year or this year, with everything that's going on, I've decided to reopen my clinic after maternity leave, which is now, to be Australia-wide, a fully online clinic. So that means that I can help as many couples with preconception and infertility. So I came across, I was redoing my website this week, and I actually came across a beautiful quote that I've put on my website as well. And it just kind of fits exactly how I feel about why I went through infertility. As hard as it was, I truly believe that the reason why my husband and I were put through infertility was so that I had a deep understanding of the processes that go on, what's needed through infertility, and the emotional aspect of it. So this quote by Brené Brown is, one day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through, and it'll be someone else's survival guide. And that's why I believe that I was put through infertility. So a little bit about my story. As I said, I graduated 4 years ago, and pretty much the same month that I graduated, I found out that we were going to be facing this infertility journey, basically. So being newly graduated, I went, I can look after this. I know all my stuff, and I can tackle this head on naturally. And I did. I got really healthy myself. My husband jumped on the wagon as well, and he was doing everything and taking everything that I was putting in front of him every single morning. I'd hear him shake the bottles to prove that he was having them. So but after a few years, I went, okay, I think we need a bit of help, or we need to find out exactly what's going on here. So there's lots of stuff that happened in between, but after about 2.5 years, we decided to move to IVF. So we did our first IVF in July 2018, I think it was. And from that, I had 14 eggs collected, which is a really great number. But straight away, overnight, only 7 of those 14 eggs actually fertilized. So that was the first kind of kick in the teeth. From there, we actually did really well from those 7 that fertilized. It's a whole numbers game when it comes to IVF, basically, so I'll try and streamline it. We ended up with 5 embryos, and we transferred 1 fresh straight away. Up until this point, we had never actually had a positive pregnancy test. I'd never seen 2 lines on a test ever. So we actually got a positive pregnancy test from that first that first transfer, and I just thought it was too good to be true. I just kept on saying to myself, this has been too easy, surely this can't be right, because I had seen other people go through multiple rounds of IVF before they got their take-home baby. And sure enough, when I was at a conference by myself down in New South Wales, I miscarried. And it was seriously the hardest thing that I have ever been through. I was on the phone to my sister most of the weekend because I couldn't voice what I needed to my husband, because I knew he was alone at home and no doubt going through the same thing. I didn't want him to worry. So she supported me through that weekend, and I ended up leaving the conference early and staying at her house back on the Gold Coast for the last night. And that was just the first of so many heartbreaks for us. We went straight into another transfer the very next month, and that was a negative. So I then decided to have a few months off, and about 4 or 5 months later, we transferred our last 2 embryos, and one of them took again. From there, again, when I said it's a numbers game, it really is when it comes to blood tests as well. And my HCG, which is the pregnancy hormone, kept on jumping up and down and up and down. And it was deemed at 9 weeks that I had what's called a blighted ovum. So again, heartbreak. And to top it off, I decided to get a D&C, and at the same time I had laparoscopy, and they found endometriosis. So I had that all cleared out, and it was only about 2 months later that we decided to go again. This time we had to do a full cycle again, and thankfully on the very first transfer of this next full stim cycle, we transferred my son, who is Asher. So I fell pregnant in July 2019, and I had him in end of March last year. Literally the day that the world shut down, basically. To be honest, COVID in the beginning didn't really affect me, because I don't believe I would have been able to leave the house any more than I did. But it definitely gave me the time to sit back and reflect and enjoy him, that's for sure. And over the last 12 months, it's really seeing him every single day has just made me want to help others achieve that goal. Every time I look at him, I just want to be able to give that to someone else, because the love that's there is just indescribable, basically. Don't get me wrong, I'm definitely not the stay-at-home mum type of person, hence why I've now come back to work. But being able to work online has given me the opportunity to not only help more people, but have the flexibility around him as well. So that's basically my story briefly, and yeah, my why as well.
Yeah, and this is exactly why I wanted to bring you on, because it is such a powerful story, and this is where I'd love for, if anyone is open to sharing, I've actually created a poll. Oh no, it's not changed actually. Oh yeah, here we go. I'd love to kind of just get a bit of a feel and see, for those of you who's joining, I'm just going to launch this poll now. Where are you at in this journey? Are you just in the planning phase of the pregnancy? Are you trying to conceive, or are you already pregnant? This will just maybe help us as well. And as I mentioned, there will be question time as well, where you can also ask Laurel questions too, questions about IVF if you have been trying for a while, or really kind of anything. We want to open this up. So, okay. So I'll just leave that open for a little bit longer, but this is where Laurel and I would just like to just share some tips. And again, please, you may already be trying some of these. This is just from our own personal experience. I'm sure there's probably maybe things that we have missed, but even from our own journeys, like my journey is very different to Elle's. And that's why I wanted to bring Elle on, because Elle really did go through it all. Whereas for me personally, for both of my babies, it did happen quite quickly for me. So I didn't quite have to do a lot of the tests or look into IVF. So it looks like there's 59% so far are already pregnant, which is beautiful. We've got 19 who are saying they're trying to conceive, and 21% at the moment planning the pregnancy. So I'm just going to close this off here. So these are just some things that we both had a chat about that we recommend that you could even just consider before you even start trying. So Elle, would you like to, this is kind of really your area of specialty. Would you like to kind of take over and give some advice on what you would recommend couples, women, and this is also couples as well, so you and your partner could consider before even trying to have a baby?
Absolutely, it does take two to tango. So this is not just for the females. A lot of what I'll recommend, males can also jump on board, and it's a lot easier, especially when it comes to diet and lifestyle, because you can do it together. So generally just, first up, get a general health checkup with your GP or a naturopath, and you can run some blood tests. The main ones that I would have at this initial stage is probably have your thyroid checked, especially if you've got a family history of thyroid issues. Have them check for the autoimmune antibodies for your thyroid, because that can play a really big role in falling pregnant and keeping a pregnancy. So nutrient wise, you'd be looking at things like vitamin D is really important for fertility. Iron and B12, they're responsible for keeping your red blood cells big enough to carry nutrients and oxygen around the blood. So if you're low in iron or B12, they play together, so you need to get both tested. You can't really transfer those nutrients to create healthy eggs or create healthy sperm, so they're really important as well. Obviously just a full blood count and liver profile, especially if one or both of you drink alcohol regularly. I've got just a few noted down here. Inflammatory markers is another one. The abbreviations for those are CRP for the acute inflammation and ESR for the long-term inflammation. Acute inflammation means that it's happened recently within the last day or two, and the long-term inflammation or chronic inflammation can indicate that that you may have an autoimmune issue, because the antibodies could be damaging cells within the body and then creating inflammation. And again, having an autoimmune issue, autoimmune disease, is not going to be favorable for fertility. So they're the probably main ones that I would get initially. There is a whole heap that you can get further down the track, but I'll share that on the next slide. Once you kind of get past that 12-month mark, there's more that you can do. But yeah, as it says, remove any expectations and just enjoy and have fun in the beginning. I have a Trying to Conceive group on Facebook called Trying to Conceive Australia, and the amount of girls that come on there who are only 1 or 2 months into trying to conceive and already so stressed about it all, I just feel like saying, just breathe, really, because in those initial months, it can take anywhere up to 12 months for a healthy couple to get pregnant. So even up to 18 months nowadays for what's considered healthy to fall pregnant. So be prepared to run that marathon, I guess you could say, and just enjoy it, because once you get past that stage, it's not so much fun.
No, and I think that's also something that many of us, I mean, we're just kind of conditioned as humans. If we want something, we kind of want it now, and then we expect it. And there's so much that we can just get for ourselves whenever we want it. And this is kind of maybe where it is hard, because it's, even though you might want it, your body may not be ready, or that baby may not be ready yet to come through as well. But that's really good to hear in way. And it's not good, but it's like, I think it's important to recognize when you said that a healthy couple, it could take anywhere up to 12 to 18 months. And that's still considered like healthy.
Normal. Yeah.
Normal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I just feel really sorry for those who get stressed straight away, because it can take quite a while, and seeing a negative pregnancy test every single month can be quite triggering, and affect the snowball effect of that is definitely not ideal. yeah, so creating those habits in the beginning of things, of ways that you can nurture yourself and start the communication lines, which we're going to be talking a lot about in here, with your partner, is really important right from the beginning. And that you're both on board with trying, obviously. Yeah, so they're the main things. Starting off with. This is a big one. I myself, honestly, to be honest, so I started studying to be a naturopath when I think I was about 24, 25. And to be honest, I had no idea what my menstrual cycle was meant to be like, because I'd been on the pill. So I'd been traveling overseas. I would just take my pill, and every now and then I'd stop and I'd get a withdrawal bleed, and that's kind of it. I didn't know that there were different hormones that played into different parts of your cycle, or really that it just didn't get taught in school. And that I'm a big advocate of speaking to your girls about this and teaching them about the different phases of your menstrual cycle, because a lot of women still just don't know. So we do have different phases. So the initial stage obviously is when you had your period. When you are on the pill, it's not actually classed as a period. It's called a withdrawal bleed. I do get a lot of women coming to me saying, oh yeah, but I get a regular cycle every month because I'm on the pill, but it's not actually a cycle because it's a synthetic form of hormones. So the first initial phase of your menstrual cycle is called the follicular phase. So that's when the follicles are growing, and the primary hormones that are responsible for that first phase are follicle stimulating hormone and estrogen. As you move, once your estrogen gets high enough, so the bigger the follicle gets, the more estrogen you produce. When that follicle gets big enough, there's a hormone called LH, or luteinizing hormone, that will be triggered, and that will trigger ovulation anywhere from 12 to 24 hours after that peak hormone. So that triggers ovulation. From there, we move into your luteal phase, and the dominant hormone in this phase is called progesterone. That is what keeps the pregnancy healthy and sustainable until the placenta takes over, basically. So ideally, we want that luteal phase to be about 14 days long. If you ever experience any kind of spotting leading up to your period, it could indicate low progesterone, in which case it might not give the embryo a chance to actually implant before you actually start shedding your lining. So if you have a regular cycle, it can be a lot easier to pinpoint ovulation, because say if you had a 28-day cycle, then you would count 14 days back, or if you had a 30-day cycle, then you count 14 days backwards from then. And if you're, I'm going to run through the testing in the next slide, but that's when you can kind of determine when to start testing with ovulation kits as well. So there's loads of information on the internet about learning about your cycle, and I highly recommend it, just so you can get an idea of when those days are that you're actually fertile. Your sperm can live up to 6 days before you ovulate, but the optimal time is 3 days or less, and the egg can survive for 1 day after. So you're kind of, you've got a 6-day window there. So 5 days before and 1 day after.
Okay.
So pinpointing ovulation. Something that I would probably recommend after maybe 4 or 5 months, if you're really not sure if you're ovulating or when you're ovulating. As I said, in those first few months, just enjoy yourselves. But after that, you can try a couple of these things. So ovulation prediction kits it's a urine test that that tests for that LH hormone. So once you get a peak on that LH test, you're going to ovulate within 12 to 24 hours after that. So you've always got LH in your body, so it's always going to come up with a second line. So that line needs to be as dark or darker than the control line to know that you're that you're almost going to ovulate. And you can keep testing for a day or two after that, just to make sure that that peak goes away, because sometimes you can actually have a peak for a couple of days in a row, or what seems like a couple of days in a row. So until you get used to other signs and symptoms of ovulation, you can keep testing for a couple of days after as well. Another way that you can pinpoint ovulation and actually confirm that you've ovulated is through basal body temperature charting. And that's with a basal temperature, thermometer, sorry. And that means that it goes to 2 decimal points. And basically your temperature rises once you've ovulated. So sometimes some people can get a little bit of a dip right before ovulation, so that they know that they're ovulating. But then after that, they can confirm that you've ovulated by having a rise in temperature. So the progesterone is like a warm hormone, basically. Other body signs that you can look for is presence of egg. It's called egg white cervical mucus. So that means that it's fertile and will hold on to the sperm. And then you can also check your cervix position. Other symptoms that some get are cramping, breast tenderness, so similar sometimes to your symptoms that you have at your period. I do suggest only tracking for a few cycles, just for your mental health. It can get a lot having to wake up at the same time, taking your temperature before you move, stressing that you've moved too much at night, which are all factors when temp charting. So only do it for a few cycles so that you can get used to knowing the signs and symptoms of what your body does when you ovulate. So other things that you can do is get hormone testing by your GP. Once you get to that, usually they like you to wait till about that 12-month mark to start full-on fertility testing. But after, I'd say maybe 6 to 8 months, you can ask to get your hormones tested. There's different hormones that should be tested on different days of your cycle, and basically your LH, FSH, and estrogen and prolactin should be tested on day 3 of your cycle, and your progesterone, which is that second half of your cycle hormone, should be tested 7 days after ovulation. So a lot of the time doctors will say, go get this tested on day 21, but not everyone has a 28-day cycle. So day 21 for you could be your ovulation day, or it could be before your ovulation day if you have really long cycles. So you need to first track when you've ovulated and then wait 7 days, and that's when you're going to get your peak of progesterone, because you could also maybe get it too soon or too late and have a false low reading and think that you've got low progesterone. So before you get your progesterone tested, just try and track as close to possible when you've ovulated. If it's a day or two off and you can't get to the clinic on day 7, that's fine. Just keep note of it, or just let your doctor know.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions at all about the hormones? If so, please just come into the chat box. Because if not, then we're going to start talking a little bit about Let's Talk Baby. Now, what I mean by Let's Talk Baby, I'm talking about creating conversation with your partner, with the person who you want to conceive a baby with, or even if you are single and maybe you are looking into IVF, who is going to possibly be there to help and support you as well. You know, talk to your mum or your family or your friends if you are single and wanting to bring a baby into the world. So I want to share this information for everyone. Communication with your partner is paramount. I think it's really important to even sit down, for those of you who are thinking about having a baby, or for those of you who are pregnant already, it's not too late. It's really important to create some conversation with each other about what roles are you going to play as parents? You know, what does being parents look like to you? And I've actually put together a little worksheet that I will email out to everyone, which can be a really good kind of conversation starter where you can sit down together and kind of go, okay, well, what is bringing a baby into the world? What does this look like to us? What roles are we both going to play? Because I know, my husband was very hands-on, and he was very willing to get up in the middle of the night with me and change the nappy so I could sleep, or he'd take the baby for me once I had finished feeding, and he would then change the nappy. And like, we did it together. But how would that look as well? Because it can make a difference too for depending on partners, if they are working as well, and the hours that they work. So just start to have conversations with each other. Who's going to stay at home with the baby? Because now many of us have careers that we aspire to and that we've worked hard for. And it's okay too if you don't want to be the stay-at-home parent. That is absolutely okay. But have those conversations now. How long will you want to plan having off work? How is that going to affect you both as well? We're going to talk financially too soon. Look into maternity leave. Does your company, or if you work for a company, do they offer paid maternity leave? No matter where you are in the world, does your government also give paid maternity leave? Look at what entitlements you might have. The government paid parental leave that may be available for both you and your partner. Some countries, even partners can get paid time off and paid maternity leave. What does that look like? It's different for every country.
2 weeks worth in Australia for paternity leave.
For partners?
Yeah.
Okay. And so does that mean if they work for someone, they have to give them that 2 weeks? Is it now?
Yeah, so the government gives 2 weeks, which is $700 and something per week.
Wow. They didn't have that when I had
Harley. No, and then for maternity leave, it's 18 weeks, which again is about 700 something a week before tax. But I know a lot of men who just don't even actually take it because it's less than what they earn or what could get with annual leave. So obviously annual leave would factor in there as well. But just back on that communication side of things, that was a huge thing that we constantly had to work on throughout the 4 to 5 years before Asha came. And what we found worked the best was actually getting out of the house and going for a walk and not having the distractions of the TVs or our phones in our hands, and just having a debrief, just even if it's just daily life. It doesn't even have to, you don't even have to talk about fertilities or babies or what's to come, but just having that debrief each day without distraction really does strengthen the communication, and that you need to build that foundation for when and if you do have hard times, not just in the preconception but through pregnancy and also parenting. I know that we were so focused on trying for a baby that we never once talked about what parenting would look like for us, because we didn't even know if it was going to happen for us, so we didn't want to even go there. So that for us would have been a really hard conversation even when I was pregnant, because we had lost a few babies. We didn't even want to have that conversation for fear of jinxing. Thankfully, I do have a really supportive partner, but when you're sleep deprived and you are not you, basically, you have that resentment of being awake at 3 a.m. while your partner's snoring next to you, even if they're not working. And it's just natural when you've got so many hormones running through. Definitely having that ability to communicate how you're feeling and what the expectations are, and if it might look one way one week and you may need to change it the next. Having that give and take and that flexibility is really important as well when it comes to parenting, for sure.
Yeah. And again, even have fun with it. Maybe you could do like a little journaling challenge each and say like, this is my vision for us. And then you can share it with each other if actually talking about it isn't easy. But yeah, it's something that I just really recommend, so that then you both are approaching this with knowing the expectations of each other, or knowing what one wants.
Like, what was your childhood like when around this situation? Would you have been allowed to do that, or would you allow your children to do that? So basing it off your upbringing is a really good way to open the conversation as well, because you might not know, as you said, you don't know what you don't know. So basing it off situations in your childhood maybe that you weren't happy with, or that you did really love about even if it comes down to swimming lessons or something like that. Like, I never had swimming lessons as a kid, but my partner did, so he really wants our son to have swimming lessons, and I really want him to because I never had that. So even little things like that, which are obviously financial decisions. No,
that's great, because I think too, like, a lot of us, that, like, we have our own morals and things that we grew up with. So what's important to you, and have those conversations. There was actually a question in regards to the hormones, where Cozy has asked, could these tests please be written down, or can I find this info somewhere? I wasn't near fast enough writing it all down. So maybe would that be something that you'd be able to?
I do already have it written down, and I can pop it into a handout and either email it, or I can give it to you, Shari, to pop onto the email as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. So as a naturopath, would you mind sharing a little bit of information about the importance of diet, nutrition, and gut health, not just preconception, but when you're trying to conceive as well as during pregnancy?
Yeah, absolutely. What I found really interesting when I was researching fertility and for when I was pregnant as well, was that what your state of health is now, preconception and in pregnancy, will actually flow on to not just your baby, but also their children as well. Like, can you imagine what you're eating today could potentially affect your grandchildren? Like, that just blew my mind. But it makes sense, because our DNA flows through, and obviously just because you have a genetic disorder or predisposition for a genetic disorder doesn't mean you're going to have it, but it's things like diet, nutrition, and gut health that are going to influence that. So it's like having a light switch. If you could have the light switch there, but it could be switched off for now. And by you making a decision to be exposed to chemicals, or eat a poor diet, or if you have poor gut health, all of these things can easily turn that switch on for your child, which then gives their children a greater risk of having that genetic disorder as well. So all of these things that are on the screen, stress, mental health, diet, sleep, exercise, genetics, microbiome, all playing together. And that's what I really love about being a naturopath, is that unlike a doctor that just kind of focuses on the main point that you're coming in to see, I actually look at every single body system. So when I see a patient, I run through every single body system, even if they're coming in for something to do with, I don't know, skin issue or something like that. I'll run through even their menstrual cycle, because obviously hormones play a factor in it. So every single part of your body works together. So it's really important to give yourself and your baby the best chance, and their grandchildren, your grandchildren, the best chance that you can, especially with the way that our food and soils are at the moment. Australia has one of the worst types of soils over here, so much so that our prenatals actually need to have higher levels of iodine in them now, because our soils have been deemed as deficient basically in iodine, and it's really important for pregnancy. I'm just 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Just a question while I'm on that. If the mother has allergies to certain foods, how do you introduce it to the child? That is a process. So I always recommend obviously doing it in the morning, so that not obviously at night when they're going to go to sleep. And it depends what kind of reaction you have to the food. If it's like an anaphylactic, I would even wait till the child is a bit older. I'm still yet to get to that part with my child. So far, so good. He's had everything and he's been okay. But the big allergy foods, thankfully I don't have any allergies, but the big allergy foods I haven't exposed him to too much. That's kind of a whole different kettle of fish really when children's health. So I can't elaborate too much on that right now, sorry.
Okay, so also looking at toxins in your home, how does this play, like how can like the things that we use on a daily basis affect the body?
This is the one of the most expensive parts of trying to get everything right, because when you actually look into what you're exposing yourself to, it's basically everything. So you've got perfumes, toothpaste, your fruits and veggies can have sprays on them, additives and preservatives that are in foods, chemicals that you're cleaning with, things that you work with, going swimming, they're everywhere basically. So I would recommend starting with things that go in your mouth and things that you inhale, i.e. your dishwashing liquid or dishwasher tablets, and your perfumes. Swap them out for more cleaner versions. So for perfumes, you can try and use topical essential oils instead. And when it comes to dishwashing stuff, then there's a whole range of items that you can get nowadays that's less toxic. The reason why primarily is because, especially when it comes to things like BPA, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard, but you may not understand why we shouldn't have it. So BPA actually mimics estrogen. So when you look at the cellular structure of BPA, it's actually very similar to estrogen. So if you can imagine a key and lock situation. So the cell is the lock and the estrogen is the key. So to activate that cell to do its job, estrogen needs to attach to the cell. If you've got high levels of BPA in your system, the BPA will actually attach to the cell instead, but because it doesn't have the perfect key for it, that cell doesn't actually activate. So then your body actually thinks that it doesn't have enough estrogen and naturally tries to start producing more estrogen, and then you become estrogen dominant and likely progesterone deficient as well. So that they're the sorts of examples that I mean of why, because of what it does to ourselves. But it's also the free radicals. So free radicals cause damage to cells. So you might have heard of antioxidants. Antioxidants are brought into the body to neutralize free radicals, and basically they cause damage to cells, cause inflammation in the body, and damage to reproductive service, reproductive eggs and sperm. So cleaning up as much as you can, as you run out of things, is my best tip, because as I said, it can be very expensive. You can even go as far as laundry detergents, and the biggest one I find, because I live in Gladstone, which is an industrial town, so heavy metals are really prevalent here because of the industry that we have, and the amount of aluminium, and my husband actually works at an aluminium smelter. Heavy metals are going to actually deplete the nutrients just from food, fruit and veggies, so your vitamins and minerals, because they take over. So even if you're eating a really good diet, if you've got heavy metal toxicity, then it's not going to do you any good, basically. So reducing what you can in your immediate environment will still help a lot, because there's obviously toxins and environmental toxicity out there that sometimes you just can't get away from.
Can you test for that before? And I'm not just talking about females, but also males as well.
The heavy metals?
Yeah.
So I do it with pretty much all of my fertility patients. So they test for all of the heavy metals. There's not all of them, there's about 8 heavy metals that they test for, but then they also test for the minerals as well. So it's called a hair tissue mineral analysis. So it's just taking a few cuts of hair from closest to the scalp and sending it away for testing. So then you get a full profile of not just what heavy metals are there, but what minerals are there as well. Because if you've got a high copper load and a low zinc load, then you could be looking at things like pyrroles. And it's very intricate, but definitely something that I would recommend, especially for those who work in industry, anyone who's landscaping. It's actually been cause of secondary infertility for a few of my patients. The wives thought that they were the cause of the infertility, but when we actually tested the males, because the males already had kids, and so they thought, I'm fine. When I actually tested the males, it turned out that the changes in jobs that they've had and the exposure to chemicals has made them infertile, basically. There's also different points along pregnancy that you should never get things like spray tans and wear perfumes, especially if you're pregnant with a boy. And I'm trying to remember what weeks it is. I might have to look it up. I think 24 weeks is one of the weeks, but there's a time earlier on. And basically, if you're heavily exposed to chemicals at that time in your pregnancy, it can actually affect your baby's fertility. So, so that's really interesting as well, and not good.
Okay.
Okay.
So just to
touch on those other points quickly, or?
Well, we kind of covered like about cleaning up the plate, and that's okay. I think we'll just kind of move on, because there's a lot I want to share. I'm going to try and keep this within 90 minutes. I don't think I will. So if you're happy to stick around, this is another conversation that is really important to have even before you start trying, or whilst you're pregnant now, also looking at your financial health as well, because having a baby, it costs some money. And this is where you need to kind of know what you want to be able to know what you're going to be able to afford as well, which is really important. So once again, this is all about the communication again with your partner, if you have one, or thinking about if you are on your own and you're going on this journey, what support you've got around you, but then also what are you going to need for baby? Like, how much is a baby going to cost you both? Because there is so many material things that you can get for a baby, and there's a lot of like shiny objects that you'll get like attracted to, but really kind of sitting down and going, what is it? What are the basic needs of a baby? What will we need to bring this baby into the world? What expectations do you have? And this is why it's important to express this with each other, because some mums, you may want that $2,000 pram, but the partner may be going, well, I don't see the value in that. I would prefer to spend the money doing something else or using it somewhere else for the baby. So having those conversations with each other, like, what are your expectations? But also, what kind of birth do you want to have, and how much will that cost? This is a big one. Depending on where you are in the world, do you have free healthcare? We are very lucky in this country, in Australia, that we do have free public health, but there's also option for private. But even public health, though, they can be some costs involved. Also, I'm going to talk about choosing a caregiver, but private care, whether it is you wanting to have a private midwife or a private obstetrician, there are costs that are involved that could cost anywhere up to $5,000 Australian dollars to have private care. And that's even after, if you have private health cover. Another thing to consider if you're wanting to conceive a baby or trying to conceive, do you have private health cover? If you do, what does it cover? Because there are so many different healthcare plans and things like levels. So even if you do have private healthcare, it's really important that you go, okay, you don't just expect private health is going to pay for everything. There will be costs that you will need to cover as well. How much will that look like? So that's why it's really important to do a bit of a ring around, sit down and even work out a little bit of a spreadsheet or a budget or something. And look, I'm going to be honest, we didn't do this. and I hear this a lot even from my clients saying, at 20, 25 weeks, I'd love to have a private midwife, but it's just so expensive. And we didn't know that was an option before we fell pregnant, but now we can't afford it because now we know that I'm only going to be working for another 8 weeks and then I'm going to be going on maternity leave. So therefore my income is dropping. So you need to take all of that into consideration. Having an open conversation with your partner about the common symptoms as well of pregnancy and the fact that even hopefully once you do get pregnant, that you may need time off. All right. There is no normal when it comes to pregnancy. Pregnancy looks and feels different to every woman. Some women will have no symptoms of sickness. There are some women who could have severe sickness to the point where it's a medical condition. It's called hyperemesis gravidarum, where you are sick all day, all night, and are unable to work. What would that look like? Is that something that you could afford if this were to happen to you? God hoping it doesn't, but how will you survive also financially if you need to take time off work, if you are sick during pregnancy, because it can happen. And it's all about preparation. Okay. Preparation is the key to success. And now I say this in my classes, like, I don't want everyone to focus on everything that could go wrong, because we don't want that. All right. This is also about having a positive experience, but it's kind of preparing for whatever turn your pregnancy, birth, conception could take, and being prepared with either financially or with tools and techniques to help you cope. Is there anything you'd like to add here, Laurel? You're good? Okay, you're on mute.
No, I think that's I covered a lot of that communication part earlier as well. So
yeah, and also even if you're looking into IVF, that it doesn't come cheap, does it?
No, it doesn't. You do have options of bulk billing clinics. So thankfully our government in Australia has that option. So even with that, you may be even looking at up to about $1,000 for a full, what's called a full stim cycle. And then you've got storage of embryos as well. You've got to factor in as well. So I think I was quoted at one point about $600 for just the storage, I think for 6 months, I think it was. But then we actually went to a private clinic because the options that we needed for our type of infertility, because we have a few different things going on, you couldn't get done at a bulk billing. It's primarily when you've got some male factor stuff going on. But with the bulk billing clinics, if your infertility is really quite comprehensive, then they're not going to sit there and I want to say take time. Some of them are really good, but the ones that I've heard, they don't sit there and kind of investigate as to why cycles aren't working, and you kind of get put on just a standard protocol to begin with. Whereas when you look at the private clinics, especially the one that I went to, he was very open to uncovering what was going on, so that when we did do IVF, we knew exactly what we needed to do, whether it's an immune protocol or extra assistance in the lab with the embryologist, that sort of thing. So, but you pay for that. So that can be upwards of $11,000-$12,000 per cycle, and then $3,000 for a transfer. So, and private health doesn't cover that. They don't cover it all. So even if you had very top cover, and it says it covers IVF, the only thing that they're going to cover is the hospital admission when you go in to get your eggs retrieved. And if you haven't been to hospital that year yet, then you're going to have to pay your $500 excess anyway. So you may potentially be paying a few $1,000s for a year's worth of cover before you can even get it, to cover $300. So knowing that, I think, is really important as well when it comes to fertility testing.
Okay. And of course, along with general health, moving your body, staying active. This is also then going to be able to help you during pregnancy to condition your body for birth as well. But obviously consult a healthcare professional before doing any exercise though, please. And make sure if you do have any personal trainer or anyone and you are pregnant, please make sure that they are trained and are able to prove their certification to you that they are trained to be able to assist you during pregnancy, because there is a big difference between the kind of workouts that you can do before pregnancy and during pregnancy, especially being aware of the hormone release, the relaxin throughout your body, which could cause a higher risk of muscle injury because your muscles are softened. So just recommended to do around 30 minutes each day just to create body strength. But once again, to ensure you're not pushing yourself too much. Coming back to like being able to conceive a baby, we've got to also look at our daily life and how we're feeling. If you have a really stressful, busy job and you're a busy person and you're generally just stressed with everyday life, this could also affect you being able to fall pregnant, because the body is also very smart. If you're not right and you're releasing high level of stress hormone and you're living in that sympathetic nervous system, the body may not be prepared to allow a pregnancy due to high levels of stress. So that's where exercise can help, but don't push yourself. But I think, as we said before, one of the main things is, if you are trying to conceive, enjoy trying, go on dates. Don't just make it about the fact that you're ovulating and he's got to get home quickly and you've got to get in the bedroom and do the thing.
It doesn't work. Trust me, if they know that you're ovulating, just don't tell them.
Because it kind of puts this pressure, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where possible, like even if you make like time for yourselves, and this is even really good to do before you bring children into the world, is to even like creating that connection, have that date night or have that time of the month, and you can link it with ovulation, where you're going to go out and that's your monthly date night, that you're going to go out, enjoy each other's company and have some fun with it where possible. Connection is the key if possible, and it could be an amazing time in your relationship, not just a process of just getting pregnant. Go on even a pre-baby moon, have regular dates, as I said, or even create a bucket list for yourselves. This is like a really good a little thing that you can do with each other, is to sit down and have a chat about going, okay, well, what are the things that we would like to do, and even if you're pregnant, before bringing this baby into the world. So create this list with your partner of all the things you wish to experience before having a baby, or that you might not feel will be possible once having a baby. Because this can be also one of the big shifts and changes of the transition of becoming parents, because not only when a baby is born, you are born as parents, but then your life has to change. It's not going to be the same where it's as free, I guess. And I'm not saying that's not a bad way, because it's a whole different time in your life. But is there anything that you both really would love to do that it may never happen once you have children? Also, you have this time, enjoy your friends as well, because when you do have a baby, it's hard to socialize. And look, I was that mum going, oh, my baby's going to come with me and like sleep, and yeah. And I did try that, but then you pay for it later. So that's just a little tip there. Create a bucket list for yourself. And I think also it's important to create the space for a baby in your life. Like I said, if you are a very busy person, you need to be able to create the space to create that connection, to be able to fall pregnant, or when you are pregnant, bringing your baby into the world, you need to create the space for this baby coming into your life. So another thing is really important too, is just starting to be, especially if it does come down to stress, that self-love and mindfulness. Nurture yourself, go and get out in the elements, go for a walk, use meditation, start. And this is exactly what I teach to help prepare for birth. But this is something that we all should be doing every day, if we can, is having times of just becoming conscious and being mindful. And breath. The breath is one of the best techniques that I teach, but learning these life breaths to just get out of our head and come back into the body. So go and nurture yourself, and maybe go and do some yoga, or book in some yoga once a week, and continue that even through pregnancy, with prenatal classes, pregnancy classes, or prenatal, yoga or Pilates. Go and do meditation, start practicing, even if it's just 5 minutes of mindfulness meditation, even affirmations. You can also, I'm sure, are there any affirmations for like trying to conceive? I'm sure there would be some beautiful tracks and things like that around.
Yeah, there definitely is. I know I used to jump on Spotify and just kind of in the search bar put affirmations for fertility, and but I can't think of any off the top of my head now.
Yeah.
I've now got baby
I'm
brain.
sure that there is someone that has created them though. Like there would be,
absolutely.
I would even say there'd be even meditations or visualizations that you could listen to. Visualization is a powerful tool as well. So even for yourself, start to visualize what it's going to be like bringing a baby into the world. That could also be really helpful as well. Okay. Something really important to start protecting yourself now from other people's opinions and negative stories. And this may be something, Elle, that you could share as well.
Yeah,
It's hard when someone says to you, "Oh, just
just relax,
just relax,
go have a bottle of wine."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know, obviously my story is not so positive leading up to, but it's definitely positive now. And yeah, the thing that I would hear the most is, oh, it'll happen when you least expect it. And after hearing that for 4 years, yeah, it's tough, that's for sure. So my biggest recommendation, especially if you're newly married, the next question you're going to get is, when are you having kids? Or even if you're not married, sometimes it's when you're going to have kids, is with your partner or even just yourself, come up with a standard line that you just blurt out automatically, so you don't even have to think about actually what they've said. So if someone says, "Oh, when are you trying?" just come up with a standard line that you're detached to, basically, so that it's like you're putting up a stop sign in front of you that just kind of rebounds what they've just said, because after a while it definitely can cut a bit deep. So if you can come up, even if it's a funny one, even better, but something that, or a personal joke between you and your partner, if you can come up with one that's a personal joke, then the people will just be left going, what are they laughing at? So having those kind of coping mechanisms from having negative stories. Everyone will love to share with you who what their friends have gone through as well. The negative stories of what their friends have gone through. If they don't necessarily have anything going on, then just be like, yeah, okay, that's their story, is basically what you need to keep telling yourself. That's their story.
Yeah. And same goes for birth. But you actually have a really beautiful supportive group, don't you? That if there is anyone that's trying to conceive, maybe you could put the link in for them. Sam has said that Amy Raup. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. Does affirmations and amazing information on preconception. So I'm sure there's quite a few probably out there. But start protecting yourself from negative stories. This isn't just preconception, especially during pregnancy as well, from birth
and early
stories.
motherhood as well, actually.
And motherhood, yeah. I know everyone's going to have their opinion, and I know a lot of our friends are well-meaning, and they do. A lot of them really do feel like they're coming from a place of like warning, or they think it's going to help, or but this is where it's also really important for you as an individual or you as a couple. It's okay to set boundaries. And if we don't set the boundaries early, then we are just opening ourselves up to people and allowing them to project their experience, their stories, other people's stories. And these will be people even you've never even met before who feel that it's okay for them to project what they think you should do or what happened to them, or so it's okay to set some boundaries. And I think that's a great suggestion what Elle said, when come up with something. I have 2 children. I still get asked if I'm having a third. You gonna have any more? So it never ends.
I can vouch, you're done.
I'm done. Yeah, done. Okay, so let's kind of wrap up preconception. Are there any questions? This is like the perfect time. Elle's going to stick around for a little bit and ask questions. Answer any questions. So I'll just pop the question in the chat box, or if you would like to even let me know, I can unmute you and you could even ask a question directly.
I've popped the link. I just quickly put it into a blog on my website for those tests for the hormones and everything like that. So that link's there. There's also the link to the Facebook group. The Facebook group it's quite big at the moment. It's got over 4,000 members in it right now. So it's a lot of what we call line eyes. So can anyone see a second line? And symptom checking as well. But I'm thinking of opening up registration again for a more intimate group where you can actually create connections with each other, because that's one of the hardest things that I found over the 4 years was none of my friends were going through it. And, you as my sister or my mum didn't go through it. Mum had a miscarriage, but as you said, you fell pregnant so no one understood, basically. And I lost friends over it. So many of my friends started trying at the same time as we did. And by the time we had Asha, they're, 4 years old now. So we lost contact and so having a supportive group around you, finding someone who you can relate to, confide in, that is there for you as much as you are for them. That's really important. Make sure it's not just one way, is really important. So a lot of people can't do that. So I want to open up what's called a fertility circle, just so that we can have that supportive environment, work on making these changes that I've suggested little by little, so that it's an actual lifestyle change rather than just a right here, right now change. So I've got registrations on my website if anyone's interested, but it'll probably be a month or 2 before that starts up again. So but in the meantime, that other group that I've listed is I'm in there every day. So
So sorry, there's just a couple of questions about talking about preparation for birth. I've got a whole nother slideshow that I'm going to bring up, and that's where I'm going to really share this. This part was more about preconception, fertility, what to consider before having a baby. But there are a couple of questions in here, Elle. One question is, have you heard of celiac disease having an effect on fertility?
Absolutely. So celiac is an autoimmune disease. So if you can imagine, an autoimmune means that you've got antibodies that are attacking yourself, basically. So if anything's foreign, it could potentially attack an embryo or cause damage to cells that make up the eggs. So often we find poor quality eggs. in people with autoimmune. So yes, absolutely, it can, and it's not impossible to fall pregnant. I've been able to help many people with celiac fall pregnant. For some people are absolutely fine, but others, yeah, definitely need to clean up the diet and lifestyle and do a bit of healing before pregnancy can happen. Any particular recommendations for preconception multivitamins? So there's a lot of range of multivitamins. The main one that you'll hear a lot of is over the TV every day, starts with E, and the only thing really healthy about that one is that their marketing budget, they have a really healthy marketing budget, but the tablets themselves, the quality, it's more about the quality of the ingredients. So you do hear that it has the most folic acid, but the fact that it's actually folic acid, which is a synthetic form of folate, doesn't sit well with me at all. So which ones do I recommend? Bioceuticals is a good quality product. Their pregnancy multivitamin, last I checked, which is about 4 months ago, was out of stock. So it may be back in stock now, but write that one down. So that's Bioceuticals. Tressos Natal is another one that you can get over the counter. And Fusion is a good one as well. So those three are over-the-counter versions that I recommend. But the higher dosage ones, the best quality ones, are usually the naturopathic prescription-only ones. But the bioceutical one's pretty close to it. So that's what I recommend for that. So recommend multivitamins, folic acid. So I'll just quickly run over the difference between folic acid and folinic acid. So all those three brands that I just recommended have what's called is called folinic acid. So that means it's an already activated form of folate, which is what you find in foods. So folic acid is a synthetic form. 50% of the population actually can't break down folic acid into the activated form in the body. So therefore you may only be able to break down some of it and not actually getting that whole 400 or 500 micrograms that you need for a healthy baby. So that's why, whether you have the MTHFR gene mutation or not, I just recommend just taking one with the already activated form of folate in it, which Elevate does not have. What are some strategies that the partner can use during pregnancy? Birth, hypnobirthing.
I will cover that.
What vitamins would you recommend for someone with a history of spina bifida? So history of spina bifida, I definitely have a multi that has that already activated folate in it, and I would actually be testing for MTHFR if you want to Google that and find out what that is. And it's a gene mutation issue, and I'd probably be on an additional folinic acid supplement on top of that. But yeah, it would depend on what the cause is. So yeah, just generally, yeah.
And this is where I will share with everyone as well. I'm not sure if I'm coming up, but let me see. Here we go. Sorry. I will share with everyone as well Elle's details. She is, she can possibly help you as well if you are looking at conceiving and you want some assistance or some guidance or some testing or anything done. So I will share all of that information. And yes, Tess, I will get Laurel to also share some of the recommendations as well. Okay, so I just want to say thank you, Elle. I really appreciate you coming on. Let me just stop sharing here. Because now I want to go on and share with you about how, let's see, I'm just going to share my screen. For those of you, or even when you're pregnant, now what? What do you do now once you're pregnant? So this is kind of where my expertise comes in. I really help support, and I've helped support thousands of women through pregnancy, especially last year through COVID. It was tough for many women last year. I've run free online pregnancy circles with my beautiful friend Nicola, and we had almost over 2,000 women register from all over the world. And I'm really big at wanting you to understand that you don't have to fear birth. That's my main thing. And that's where I'd love to ask you all, I'm going to do another poll here. What is the first thing that comes to mind? And you can put it in the chat box as well. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about birth? Here is a poll. What is the main thing that comes to mind? So I've got options. Fear of the pain, big one. Fear of medical intervention, that was also a big one for me. Health of mother and baby. I think all of that. I'm sure you're all going all of these. Fear of the unknown. You've never gone through this before, especially if you're a first-time mum. Fear of not being supported or not knowing your options. So the biggest one, I guess, is fear of the unknown, fear of pain, which that is absolutely normal for everyone. And I want you all to know this. We all have these thoughts. But here is where I want you to also understand and go, well, what kind of birth would you prefer? Would you prefer to have a birth where you are going into your birth fearful, not knowing your options, not feeling supported, that you get in there, you are scared, screaming and in pain because that's what the movies show? Or would you prefer to approach your birth without fear, feeling calm, relaxed, feeling supported? And yes, that is me in the birth pool, almost falling asleep on the side of the birth pool. So feel free, come into the chat box. Let me know, what would you prefer? I mean, it's kind of an obvious question, I would hope. Who would want to have this? I doubt it. So this is where I come in. But with all this fear that we have, how can we even attempt to have a positive birth? Tess says, falling asleep sounds amazing. Yeah, and do you know what it was? Like, and I am speaking from experience. I had huge fears of birth. I had huge fears of the pain. I had huge fears of needles. So I was in this predicament of going, well, I don't want to go through the pain of birth. But then the thought of that epidural was like, no way. Nicole says, would really rather not think about it and just go with the flow. Yeah, that is definitely, but this is the thing though, when we go with the flow, we're also not preparing. And when we go in not prepared, if things happen, that's when things can progress into maybe being more than what they could have been. And that's what I'm passionate about sharing. Sam says, can you have the experience of a home birth pool if you and your partner would prefer to go into the hospital than doing a home birth? Yes, absolutely. I have had both. I have had a birth in a hospital on a bed, and I've had a birth at home in the pool. I never would have thought that if I was to tell my 18-year-old self that I would have had a home birth and that I'd be teaching childbirth education classes to couples all around the world, I would not believe it. I didn't even know that home birth was an option. So this is where I know, and sometimes kind of sticking your head in the sand about it or saying, I'm just going to wing it, or I'm just going to go with the flow. It's kind of making that decision based off fear because you're not wanting to acknowledge possibly the fears or things that could possibly happen. And there is a big part of birth where, yes, we have to surrender, but it's really important to understand. So we can't plan our birth. I'd love to be able to say that by you coming along and doing a hypnobirthing course with me, that I can guarantee you a calm and relaxed vaginal birth. I just can't. But that's not what hypnobirthing is about. It's about helping you to have a positive birth. And I want you all to know that a positive birth comes with knowing your options through good education, being supported, and having tools and techniques to help you along the way. So one of the first things that I want you to start considering, and even for those of you trying to conceive, it's really important to have this conversation also now with your partner. You know, what is your goal? What kind of birth would you like to achieve? Because it's all well and good saying that I want to have a natural birth, but what are you going to do to work towards that? Because giving birth is honestly like running a marathon. Would you go and turn up to run a 40K marathon without doing any kind of training physically or mentally, and then expect your body to get through to the finish line? I know there's no way I'd be able to. And giving birth is exactly the same. What our body goes through, it's physically is like running a marathon. The physical sensations, it can be fatiguing, but then there's the mindset. And that's why if you are going to set a goal of running a marathon, you're going to give yourself a few months to work towards achieving that goal. And if you are able to train every single day and go for that run, and you run a little bit further and you get a little bit further, but it's not just the physical conditioning, it's the mindset as well. Because it's your mindset that's going to push you through those physical, strong sensations, possibly painful sensations, to get you through to the finish line. And that's where it's important to sit down and go, okay, how does this look for us? What kind of birth do I want? And it's okay if you're saying now that you want to have the epidural, that's okay. But then how can you work with the epidural and educate yourself? Okay, well, what's involved in an epidural? What are the benefits of an epidural? What are the risks of an epidural? Because there are risks associated with the pain relief of an epidural. It then can increase your risk of having an episiotomy where they cut your perineum. It then increases the risks of you having a forceps or ventouse delivery as well. So that's called assisted birth. You are then restricted to being on your back on a bed, which has been shown to decrease the size of our pelvis by nearly 20%. Yes, it can take away pain, but it then could lead to possible side effects, or the recovery after birth could also, it could take years to recover from an episiotomy as well. So it's just knowing this and going, all right, well, how are we going to approach this? Know your options, ask questions, get evidence-based information. If you do want to achieve a natural birth, what are you going to do to work towards that? You need to feel equipped and prepared, not just mums, but also birth partners as well. Sorry, I'm just opening up the chat here. I want to have a natural birth, but I want it to be positive. All I've heard from other people is get the epidural straight away. I was exactly the same. I had a friend say to me, she said, would you go to a dentist and get your tooth pulled without any anesthesia? Why would you want to then try and give birth without an epidural? And okay, like I can see where she's coming from, but when I was pregnant, even though I had these big fears, it was like there was this intuitive voice, and it just kept screaming at me, and it kept saying, like, you are not flawed. You can do this. You just need to learn how. And something that I also learned when I did my hypnobirthing courses, my practitioner, this is what I teach as well, when she said to me, Shara, your body is growing this beautiful little baby, and you don't even have to consciously think about it. Your body is doing it, and it's not that you wake up every morning and really have to focus on growing your baby. And then she said, Shari, do you think that if your body knows how to grow your baby, that then it wouldn't know how to birth your baby? And that for me was a quote that changed my whole perception of how I looked at my body. And that's one of the biggest things I think many of us haven't maybe been taught or or been shown the power of our bodies, or even understand how our bodies work. And that is one thing that, like, within the first sessions when I teach my courses, I go through all of that. And it's such an aha moment, not just for mums, but for birth partners as well. This is why I love this quote. A dream written down with a date becomes a goal broken down into steps becomes a plan backed by action makes your dreams come true. So although I say we can't plan our birth, it's not about just putting one expectation on one experience. And that's what I really want to emphasize about what I do. It's not, I want to help all of you achieve a positive experience, no matter how your baby comes into the world. And you absolutely can. And one of the most important decisions that you will ever make when it comes to the birth of your baby is choosing your medical caregiver. And this is something that no one ever explained to me that there was a difference of. That there is a difference between caregivers and models of care. So for those of you who are looking at trying to conceive, what would you look at? Are you open to public? Are you open to private? What do they have in your area? For those of you overseas, you may have different options. I know here in Australia, we have the option of public birth suites. We have private. So if you want to go private, you do have to hire a private obstetrician to be able to birth within a private hospital. They do not have midwifery-led programs within private care. Some hospitals, or there could even be detached birth centres, and some hospitals may even have programs called midwifery group practice. So that is primarily where you are assigned to a small team of midwives, and one midwife in particular who will take you through and will care for you through your pregnancy and will hopefully be on call, and if they're on shift, to be there at your birth. But if not, then it will be one of the other midwives within that team that you'd also would have met. So this is what we call continuity of care. And the evidence actually shows that continuity of care with a known midwife has better outcomes for mother and babies. And so that's why it's really important to look into the options. What is the difference between public and private? What is the difference between private obstetrician or even private midwifery-led care as well? So I really encourage you, before making the decision, because I remember when I first found out I was pregnant, the doctors said, do you have private health? And because Harley, my son, he's almost 10 now, he wasn't planned. It was a bit of a surprise. We didn't have the private healthcare. And I had always gone private. I'd always had the top private healthcare, and I'd always gone private. So when I found out I was pregnant and I didn't have the maternity cover on my policy, I went into this, oh my gosh, like, if I can't go private, because I'd always believed that going private, because you pay more money, then you get better care and more choice. And that can absolutely be the way it is. But I've also, since teaching and becoming a practitioner, really looked into a lot of studies and evidence-based information now. And it's really important to know and understand this, that if you are wanting to have a natural, as much as you can, hands-off, positive experience and approach this birth as naturally as possible, you need to ask the questions of the caregiver on what their views are on natural birth and natural birthing techniques, because there are some medical caregivers who I know that there's a medical caregiver in Brisbane. He has 100% cesarean rate. He does not do vaginal births. That's how he runs his practice. So I actually have a whole PDF that I want to share with all of you to be able to help you just kind of stimulate in for yourself some questions to take to your care provider before you make a decision, and even interview some of them and look at all models of care. Even if you do have the private healthcare cover, you may be more suited, if you want to have a natural birth, to hiring a private midwife. And some private midwives even have what they call admitting rights, where they can actually follow you into the hospital as well. Not all private midwives do. If you're wanting a home birth, it's normally a private midwife that you would hire. And again, the costs do rise with private care, both obstetrician or private midwifery-led care. But call around at the hospitals in your area. Ask if they have a midwifery group practice. Ask what their views are of natural birth. Ask how far over your estimated due date will they support you, because it's really important too that you know and understand the hospital and the policies and what the hospital might like. And even don't be scared to ask caregivers what their intervention rate is. What is their cesarean rate? Because if you are wanting to have as much as you can natural birth and you hire a private obstetrician who has a 90% cesarean rate, chances are that's how he's trained and wants to view birth, that cesarean is safest. And I didn't realize this. No one shared this with me. I was like quite late to the party, trying to get into what we have on the Gold Coast here called a birth center. I was so lucky I got in. But if you don't know that that's even an option, I have so many mums that come to me, and I just taught 2 group courses over the weekend. And one mum in particular was like, my GP didn't even mention the midwifery group practice or the birth center. So I had no idea that was an option. And now that's the model of care that I want, but it's fully booked and I can't get in. So some of these options, if this is what you want, especially if you want a private midwife or if you're wanting to have a home birth, you will have to call that midwife literally as soon as you have weed on that stick and got that positive result, because they book out so quickly. Same with the midwifery group practices or the birth center. You will have to call and get on the waiting list very, very early. Christine, how do you find hospitals in Australia respond to preferences for a natural hypnobirth? Are they more open-minded these days? Yes, absolutely. I have so many midwives that refer to me now because they have seen and attended the births of the couples that I have taught, and they have seen how empowered they are. And honestly, it makes their job easier. To have a couple that comes in who have been educated, knowing their options, have all the tools and techniques, it kind of allows them to take that step back and be an observer rather than being like a driver of your experience. And that's exactly what I want for all of you, is no matter how your baby comes into the world, I want you to feel that you have been a part of the decision making, and so therefore feel like you've been a driver of your experience and not a passenger. So I will send you in the post-webinar email, I will send you a PDF of some questions that you could sit down and talk about with each other to then take and even interview different caregivers, because one obstetrician may give you a really beautiful feeling and another obstetrician may not. So don't just go with the one that your GP has referred you to. So if you go to your GP and they say, okay, well, I'm going to refer you to this private obstetrician, that doesn't mean you have to go with that private obstetrician. I recommend meeting quite a few if you're wanting to go private before making that commitment and paying that money. Because the last thing you want is to get to 39 weeks and then all of a sudden you have a caregiver going, I don't allow any of my mums to go over 39 weeks in 2 days, so I'm going to book you in for your induction. I do inductions on Wednesdays and cesareans on Fridays. So which one would you like? That's when you're 39 weeks, that's the last thing you should be dealing with. So that's why it's important to ask the questions of your caregiver straight up, saying, this is the kind of birth that we would like. Are you supportive of natural birth? We'd like to have the most positive birth possible with minimal intervention. What is your view of birth? So yeah, talk with a few different care providers and see if they're going to support you in every way possible to achieve your goal. Choose a care provider whom you feel comfortable and safe with. Really, really important. If you are not currently happy with the support you are getting, then it's never too late to search for a care provider who will support you and your birth preferences. I have had a mum literally at 39 weeks change caregivers and went from private into public because she did not feel supported. For us, feeling supported and heard is one of the most important things for us during our labor and birth. Are there any questions about choosing the right care provider? Please feel free to ask in the chat. What would you suggest if there is no private or midwife-led service in your home or hospital? Educate yourself. Go in and make sure that you are prepared as much as possible, and have your birth partner just as educated so that they can advocate for you. And go in with some preferences. Now, I don't like to call it a birth plan, because I kind of sometimes feel if we're putting this plan together that then there's this expectation, we have this one expectation on one experience. If it doesn't go to plan, then we can come out feeling disappointed. But it's important you know your options, write down your preferences, and even before you have your baby, when you're at your antenatal appointments with your partner, whoever is going to be with you, whether it be your husband, your boyfriend, your whoever the father is, or if you're having someone else support you like your mother or friend, make sure that you have some support going in, and share with your caregiver about what you want. Because I'm gonna advocate for the medical caregivers as well. I know a lot of midwives that say like they have couples coming that know nothing. So of course they're going to have to in some ways manage the labor for them because they don't know how to help themselves. And one of the biggest compliments I get from midwives about the hypnobirthing and the hypnobirthing program is that the hypnobirthing couples know their options. They know how to advocate for themselves. They know what questions to ask, and they know how to express what they want. Because if your midwife doesn't know what you want, then how will she know how to support you? And a lot of us don't know the options, and so therefore we don't know what questions to ask. Okay. Sam, husband as of Saturday. Oh, congratulations. Tess, do you just need to ring around to find these things out? I live in Hobart and know of the Launceston Birth Centre, but don't know of anything in Hobart. I'm not 100% sure where to start at this stage, just planning pregnancy. Yes, just call around. Yep. Look into private, look into public, we have some beautiful hypnobirthing practitioners in Hobart as well. You may even be able to contact them, and they may be able to give you some advice on if you want to go private, what obstetricians who are supportive of natural birth, if that's the way that you're wanting to go down, or maybe get into some Facebook groups or ask your friends what their experience was with hospitals or birth centers. Or yeah, absolutely. It don't just go off what your GP says. Okay, I'm just going to refer you to this hospital. Do your own research, look around, look at the options, so that when it's time, you already have all the information. Yeah, absolutely. Could one of us here? Yeah, and that's where, please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Like, I have a lot of, mums on Instagram and things like that message me, but that's why I want to provide you a PDF to give you an idea of the kind of questions I recommend you consider. But it will all come down to first talking about what you want. You need to know what you want to then know what kind of care is going to be best for you and in alignment with the kind of preferences or the kind of birth that you want. Yeah. So taking this initiative of doing your own research and educating yourself, there is so much free information out there. And that's why I wanted to hold this, is because I know not everyone can attend, childbirth education classes. I am the host of the Nurture Hub Pregnancy and Birth podcast. So I'll just write it in the chat. Nurture Hub Pregnancy and Birth podcast. It's on Spotify. Go look it up. Nicola Lay is my co-host. I work very closely with Nicola. Also for Mum's Preconception, Nicola is amazing to work with if you do have any anxiety or stress in your life. She's a breathing coach. So I can also share her details with you as well. But honestly, one of the best investments my husband and I ever made was investing in an independent childbirth education program. Please know that there is a difference between hospital birthing classes and independent programs. A hospital birthing class will give you information that is inside their policies. There are options outside of policies though, and that's something I really want to emphasize, that all hospitals will have policies. And we kind of use this analogy, and I share this in my first session, kind of like the red and yellow flags on a beach. The red and yellow flags represent safety. We know that's the safest place for us. And that's why many of us know and choose to birth in a hospital, because that's where we feel safest, because we know that there are highly trained professionals that are there that can come and help us if we get into trouble, and they are experienced in that. But just like if you were to go and swim at a beach, there's normally a lifeguard looking over that area of the flags. If you were swimming in that beach, would you ask that lifeguard to swim with you between the flags? Probably not. No. They would say, no, I will stand back and watch. And if you get into trouble, that's when I will come in and that's when I will help you. Well, this is kind of when I teach with our options, what many of us want when it comes to our birth. We don't necessarily want and need our medical caregivers in there swimming with us, but rather standing back, watching and observing and just allowing us to do what we are designed to do. But it's really important to know where the flags are, because they're all hospitals, caregivers, their flags are all different. Some caregivers, their flags are like right out here, very supportive of natural birth, natural birthing techniques, love the hypnobirthing, all of those techniques, movement. They won't be telling you to get up onto your back on a bed. They will encourage you to use movement to progress the labor, to use breath and vocalization to help the labor. When we come into the hospital, the flags do come in. Every hospital has policies, and those policies are there to protect you, but they're also very much there to protect the hospital. And the hospital policies are not set on an individual circumstance or an individual basis. They're a one size fits all. So that's why you need to know, well, where are the flags for this hospital? What are the policies? And that's unfortunately one of the disadvantages of the hospital birthing classes, is that they'll only tell you what they want you to hear within those flags. Whereas an independent program, like the program I teach, I will give you all of your options. And for you to know that you can negotiate and you can push those flags out, but you don't know that. And like, you don't know your options on, like, you don't have any options if you don't know them. So I'll just keep reiterating that. Okay, just having a look at the chat. Ash, so you're seeing a midwife just at the doctor's? No, she probably won't be the one that will be at your birth. No. Something to ask her. But I would say if she works within a clinic, a GP clinic, that she's the midwife for that clinic, but she won't work on birth suite. So it's maybe something to ask. Laura, I'm 12 weeks pregnant and have my first hospital appointment tomorrow. Perfect timing. Is there any other questions you can suggest to ask? I'm not sure what to expect. If I can't get into a program, is my only option to deal with a different midwife, or do I have the option to look at other public hospitals that aren't in my area? I will send you the list of questions. Definitely print them out. I'll probably get that out in the morning though. Once the recording has processed, I'll try and get it out tonight if I can. Yeah, look, I guess going into the hospital, 12 weeks is still quite early. Do you know if that hospital has a midwifery group practice? Something to ask. If they say yes, ask if you can be put forward for that program. And these programs also do like things have to line up. A lot of the time you've got to be low risk and things like that, but you can ask those questions, but you can absolutely look at your other options. But sometimes some public hospitals will only take within a catchment. So just be aware of that as well. Okay. There are a heap of books. One of my top book recommendations, and I will put it in the chat, is by Dr. Rachel Reed. And she's written the book, Why Induction Matters. Don't be put off by the name. It's a really great, easy to read. So it's not thick. It's really easy to read, evidence-based book. And I refer to it a lot in my courses because it's all evidence-based. Yes, I will be sending a list of questions to everyone via email. Yes. Other books that I recommend you look at, one's by Dr. Sarah Buckley, and hers is called Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering. L-E-Y. Those are my top two book recommendations if you're into reading. Look, I hate to say this because I had it. Put down Up the Duff and honestly get one of these kinds of books. Another book that I've just listened to and read was Giving Birth Like a Feminist by Millie Hill, I think her name is. That's also a really good one. I'm going to be bringing her onto my podcast. I've actually interviewed Dr. Rachel Reed and also Dr. Sarah Buckley on my podcast as well. I think Dr. Sarah Buckley's maybe around episode 8 and Rachel Reed's episode 13, but I will share that with you too. But be open with your doctors and midwives about what you want. Express to them and say, I want to have a natural birth, and try and avoid intervention if that's what you want. Or if you say, look, I'm open to epidural, but I'd like to try and avoid it as much as possible. Or even if you would prefer to have a cesarean birth, that's okay. As long as you are coming from a place that you are making an informed decision, that's what we want for all of you. Ella shared the Mama Natural is a great week-to-week pregnancy guide and explains a lot of what to expect as well. So I just want to share this statistic with you because when I heard this, I was it's just saddens me. And this was shared by Rachel Reed in her podcast episode with me. What we here in Australia, and I'm sure it's the same in the States and any other Western countries because our model of care is very similar, up to 43%, 42 to 43% of women in our country who are having normal, healthy, uncomplicated pregnancies are having their labor induced. So these are women who have had perfect pregnancies, nothing's gone wrong, like everything is medically fit and fine, yet almost 4.5 out of 10 women need help going into labor. This just really baffles me. Like, why is it that so many women are being recommended induction? But this is where it's really important to know and understand. Medical intervention does save lives. There is always a time and place for medical intervention. But there's also understanding the risks involved with that medical intervention. And that's exactly what I go into depth with in my courses, because I want you to know all of the options. Now, there was another study done by the beautiful Kate Levitt. I've also interviewed Kate. It's going to be one of our, I'm going to be releasing that podcast episode within the next few weeks. So Kate is a doctor in Chinese herbal medicine and acupuncture, and she conducted a study called the Complementary Therapies for Labor and Birth Study. And what she studied, so this was the details of the study. It was a 5-year study of 176 couples in a mix of demographics in Sydney hospitals. The study highlighted a dramatic improvement for the study group who participated in the independent childbirth education program, like hypnobirthing, in comparison to the control group who received the standard hospital preparation. These were the independent childbirth education programs tend to go more into coping techniques, and that's exactly what I share. relaxation techniques, acupressure points, visualization, breathing, massage, getting the birth partner involved, active birthing through movement and creating pelvic mobility, as well as teaching the birth partners how to advocate as well. And the results were amazing. So those who did the independent childbirth education program, prepared for their birth with the tools and techniques that I also share, reduced the rate of epidural by 65%. Also, they improved normal vaginal delivery by 45%. 53% also had a lower instance of resuscitation of the baby after birth. 44% lower instance of cesarean section, and a 50% lower of instance of augmentation. So that's induction of labor. So these techniques work if you work them. So that's where I'm going to share just a little bit, because I know kind of we're at that 2-hour mark. I know I knew I would go over, so I do apologize, but I hope you're feeling it's worth it. Like, what is hypnobirthing? And I don't want you to be scared off by the hypno part of hypnobirthing, but it's basically childbirth education with a difference. It's where I help you and give you tools and techniques to prepare your mind and body for a positive birth, no matter how your baby comes into the world. So please know, it's not just about natural birth. I do cover how you can use techniques if you do choose to have an epidural, what your options are around medical pain relief, as well as natural pain relief options. I also share a lot of information about induction, your options around induction, and I go through in detail the induction process and then what techniques you can use for induction. I even talk about cesarean birth and what techniques you can use for a cesarean birth. So it's really all about mindset, giving you relaxation tools, having good support, and asking that support from your caregivers, and of course the education. So our philosophy in hypnobirthing, especially the Hypnobirthing Australia Hypnobubs program, is that birth is normal. It's a normal physiological function of the body, and you are perfectly designed to birth your baby. For those of you who are pregnant, or when you are pregnant. Okay, so what if things aren't completely natural though? As I mentioned, I do want to help you as much to prepare for a calm, positive birth, but you need to also be willing to calmly meet whatever turn your birthing takes. The courses I have can help you prepare for natural birth, also for cesarean. I have a course specifically for cesarean birth too, that I only help mums prepare for a cesarean birth. It's a private 3-hour course that I teach. But I'd love to actually, if you want to come into the chat box, for those of you still here, what about hypnosis? What have you heard or seen of hypnosis? Isn't it a bit weird? Has anyone experienced hypnosis before? Let me know. Because I love asking this question actually in my classes. In my first session, I actually go around and I ask, I'm like, has anyone experienced hypnosis before? Or what do you think the hypno part of hypnobirthing stands for? So it does stand for hypnosis. But if you were sitting there going, no, I've never experienced hypnosis before, I actually can tell you have. Every single one of us has experienced hypnosis many times during the day, and you probably don't even recognize it. Because hypnosis, all the definition of hypnosis is where you are in a state or condition where you do become highly responsive to suggestions, but it's where you have a concentration on a single idea with the exclusion of all other thoughts. So all it means, to put it in short, is a state of focus. And that's exactly what I teach mums, you, to be able to do, is to bring yourself into a state of focus through using different techniques. Rather than focusing on pain, I don't want to do this, I can't do this, which then causes tension in the body, I give you some beautiful techniques that include breathing, relaxation, visualization, heaps, movement, birth partner techniques through massage, touch, acupressure points. And then you bring your focus into that rather than into the negative. And that only you can choose your focus. Okay. Sorry, I missed that. Rose, no, it's never too late. It's never too late to have a consultation with me. It's never too late to start preparing for your birth. I've helped mums right up to 40 weeks. And then I had one mum who finished my course and then went into labor, that finished the course on the Saturday, went into labor on the Monday and had an amazing birth. So the Hypnobirthing Australia, so I'm a Hypnobirthing Australia Hypnobubs practitioner. Please know there is a difference in programs. There are a few different programs available now out there. Make sure that if you do want to do any with a particular practitioner, that you connect with them and understand that not all hypnobirthing programs are the same. So I just really want to emphasize that. Our program is about you having a positive birth, not just a natural birth. But it teaches you how to harness the power of your mind through self-hypnosis and other relaxation techniques to give you the tools for a positive and calm experience. So as I said, it's childbirth education with a difference. It allows you to have the ability to create and maintain that positive mindset, helps you reduce fears. I'm not going to say remove, because we're always going to have, that little bit of there's that unknown. We are creatures of certainty. We like to be certain of outcomes. When we are not certain of outcomes, then that's when we, instinctively, we're designed to kind of protect ourselves. So that's never going to stop. But when you understand how your body works, when you understand the hormones of birth, how your body's designed to birth, and what happens physiologically with the body changes, with your baby, with your pelvis, how to create space with your baby. When you know how your body works, then you can work with your body. We are not designed to birth on our back on a bed. And this is what we see of birth. Women in a hospital setting, on their back, on a bed, drips in their arms. Like, this is what we see as normal. And it has become normal for many women. But the specific tools and techniques that you use during labor help to create a positive, empowering, calm birth experience. It also helps release pain as well. You can relieve pain through releasing these pain relieving hormones. And I love talking about the hormones of birth. That's one of the main sections of Unit 1 that I teach. Okay. Please know that this is not some hippie woo-woo way of giving birth. Like, there's no chanting or any like swinging of pendulums or anything like that. No one can take control of your mind at all. And that's not what hypnosis is. This is a very much an evidence-based course. We are continually updating the information. I myself are continually educating myself on the latest studies, on the latest evidence, so I can give you the latest evidence-based information. So it's evidence-based information for the birth process, the pros and cons of procedures as well surrounding the birth, and being able to make your own decisions. Tools for birth partners on what you can do throughout pregnancy as well, and at each stage of the labor. It's practical knowledge and tools too. What hypnobirthing is not. It's not a set of rules on how birth should look or feel. We value individuality and differing circumstances. So that's why I'm going to keep expressing to you that it's not just about having a natural vaginal birth. It's about you having a positive experience. And that may mean for some of you that intervention is safest or cesarean is safest. And that is okay. That doesn't mean that then you're handing your power over. Then I want to share with you what you can do to have a really positive cesarean birth. It's not about any particular type of birth. As I said, what if your birth takes a different path? Hypnobirthing is not all about the birthing mother as well. It's very much about bringing the birth partners in and including them, and teaching them about their role and how they can advocate for you. And it's not just for couples either. I have taught single mums. I've taught same-sex couples. Hypnobirthing is for anyone having a baby. Rebecca, I'm so glad I came across this. As a psychologist, this just makes so much sense. Good. Yay. There's very much a mind-body connection with birth, huge. And when you understand that, that's when you can empower yourself. And this is where, I'm kind of coming to the end. I want you to know that you do have the power. You have the power to have a positive experience. And knowledge is power. And so that, therefore, knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment. So I hope that tonight has really opened you up to what's available. I do want to quickly share with you Like, don't just hear it from me. I know we're getting a bit late now, so what I might do, oh look, would everyone like to hear a little story? Let me just stop sharing here. I just want to share just quickly. This is a couple who I taught. Hannah is actually a midwife and her husband is a doctor, and they had quite a traumatic first birth. So much so that Hannah was having nightmares when she found out she was pregnant with Arlo about the birth of her second baby. Now, being a midwife, you would think she attends births, she would know how to birth her baby, but she didn't do any preparation, and everything she didn't want happened to her. She ended up with an epidural. She had antibiotics, she had fluids, she ended up birthing on her back. The doctor almost gave her an episiotomy as well. So this is a very short 5-minute story.
My first birth was 82 hours from when I broke my waters to when I had Avalia.
Sorry, let me just make sure, am I sharing the sound? I am, sorry.
I had an epidural, vacuum birth. I had so many different fluids going, but second time was over 11 and a half hours, I think we worked out. I didn't even mention an epidural. I felt supported, so I never mentioned that no one was helping me because I felt supported. And just being able to receive the baby and have the baby, that was just like the best feeling ever. Hi, I'm Hannah Pilates and this is my husband Garth, and we're really excited today to share our hypnobirth story. And this is our little baby Arlo, who is 10 days old today. I'm a midwife and I work at the Gold Coast Hospital.
Yeah, I'm a doctor and I also work at the Gold Coast Hospital.
When I was a midwife doing my training, I had done a hypnobirthing course, which I really enjoyed, and I've seen women have beautiful hypnobirths. So when I became pregnant with Arlo, I was really overwhelmed in the very early parts of my pregnancy with the thought of having to give birth again. I wanted it to be a positive time and I really hoped to have like a more healing birth. So we looked into our options and I found the Hypnobirthing Australia program through another friend of mine who had done it and absolutely loved it. And she found it was just so effective for her.
Well, it was a tricky weekend actually, because it was a weekend I was working. And then Hannah kind of thought you broke your waters.
You ended up taking the day off work because we thought my waters might have broken, and I was getting Braxton Hicks, now they were probably early labour pains. We put Avalia to bed and Garth and I said, we should have an early night, try and get some rest in case I go into labour early in the morning. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I just got a really quite intense surge.
Yeah, we put music on, then we got Hannah's parents to come pick up Avalia.
So we got to the hospital, into the birth centre, and my midwife had already set up the birth space for us, so the lights were really dim. I had the same rainforest room that we had with Avalia. I was just focusing on my breath, the breath was just so important this time. And so I had the gas pretty soon after I got into the pool, and just focusing, I knew I had to do long, strong breaths anyway for the gas to be effective. So I was just focusing, just breathe in, lift myself up, then drop down. And I'd kind of come up and then just float back into the water and just let the water take my weight. I didn't have painless contractions, but I felt like I could handle it. My midwife asked me, my best friend's also a midwife, and she said that she'd like to come in, and it was just the perfect time. I was just starting to feel that I'm not sure if I can do this. This is taking longer than I expected. I got to this point, I thought this would be over. Am I getting stuck at this point now? And then they said, do you want Kirsten to come in? And I was just like, oh yes, that's exactly what I need. A fresh face, and I know she's just the most positive person. As soon as I see her, she makes me feel so good about myself. I knew if she came in and I saw her face, I could just keep going for that little bit longer. I had this really conscious moment at that time. I was standing up, I had a bit of a break from contractions, and I was like, oh, where do I want to have this baby? And everyone just looked at me like I had just re-entered the room, like I wasn't even in the labour anymore. And I was like, do I want to have the baby in the water? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And everyone was like, oh, okay.
Try to make it back into the
And then literally I was holding onto the side of the bath and I was like, I want to get back in. I think it'll be nice to have the baby in the water. And that was it pretty much.
Yeah, it didn't make
I just got this overwhelming urge just to bear down, and I was kind of leaning over the bath and I had one leg. My body just obviously told me that I needed to do this. I had one leg completely up the side on the bath.
No,
like,
that was up in the air.
Up in the air.
I was holding the leg.
I remember just thinking, I need to make space. I don't know why. My leg just went whoop. And so Garth was trying to hold one leg whilst also trying to like catch the baby as the baby was coming out quite quickly. Yeah. And
slow the head coming down.
Yeah, slow it down a little bit, because once I got that urge, it was just like, okay, this baby's coming out now. And he was born pretty much like a minute later. Like, it just all happened so quickly. So I had an hour of skin to skin, and we didn't even cut and clamp the cord for like an hour and 10 minutes afterwards or something. I was up straight away pretty much after that, in the shower, and we were home in bed. I had the placenta at 9:10, and I was home in bed by 12.
There's moments where we looked at each other, I was so proud of like how well she was going.
I could really see that in your eyes too, like when you looked at me, and I just knew that that's how he felt. I didn't even have to open his mouth. The way he looked at me, I looked at him and I was like, he's so proud of me right now, and he knows I'm doing this. You never went to sleep, you never kind of switched off, you were always there and you were always present. And he kept talking to me in the middle, like in between contractions, you can do this, you know, you're doing so well. And I think because we'd practiced it before, it wasn't like, I could really feel you meant it. And because I really felt like he meant it, I really believed it. And every time he said it to me, it just helped me get through that. I've already recommended hypnobirthing to
5 people already.
Yeah, I have. And like all my friends and family, and like even friends that had quite a medicalized birth and aren't necessarily planning a natural birth this time. I've said it doesn't matter. You don't have to do hypnobirthing and think, no, I can't have pain relief, or I can't ask for any intervention. It's not about that. It's just about, if you choose to have an elective cesarean this time, it's viewing it as a positive experience and being able to go through it calmly, and like even when the spinal or the epidural is getting put in, like being calm and positive and still feeling empowered that you've carried your baby and that you're birthing the way you want to and making it your own experience. I think it's about having all the knowledge and then making informed choices and then feeling empowered because you're more in control of your emotions and yourself and your experience. So I hope you really enjoyed hearing Arlo's birth story. I would 100% recommend doing the Hypnobirthing Australia program with Shari. It's just completely transformed our whole birthing experience, and we couldn't be more grateful.
So I hope you don't mind that I shared that. I think it's important. I mean, obviously I can talk about hypnobirthing until the cows come home, because for me, this course was life-changing. It was through my own experience that I then became a practitioner, because I truly believe that every single one of you deserves to be given this information. We all deserve to be given a positive birth, pregnancy and birth. So I want to take this moment to thank you all. If you are interested, if you do want to connect with me or be supported by me or learn how when you are pregnant, please make sure you come back and connect with me once you do fall pregnant. I offer this course now fully online. So it's live. So just like this, live online webinar, we get to interact. I'm teaching in different time zones. So I have a course coming up for USA, Canada time zone. That's starting second week of February. And then I run an online course for Australia time zone every single month. So my courses do book out. Make sure that you do book in advance if you're interested. And to say thank you, for those of you who've stuck around, to say thank you, I want to give you a discount code for any of my online courses, where you will get 10% discount off the course price. So that's a full course price. So the discount code is Birth Matters. I have made that up, so you can use it anytime now by going into the link going to my website, which is belly2birth.com.au, which I will share with you as well. So let's wrap it up. Does anyone have any questions to wrap up the night about hypnobirthing, birth preparation, how to get your birth partner involved? Okay, this has been great. Thank you. Beautiful. My husband got more out of it than I did. Yes, this has been definitely, I'm happy to keep going. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been amazing. You're welcome. Thank you, Rose. You're in Melbourne. I will definitely be reaching out soon. Beautiful. I'm teaching a lot of couples. I've taught a lot of couples in Victoria this last 12 months. You're welcome, Jacqueline. Thank you for coming along. Thank you, Tess, for coming along. How long is the code? Will the code last for? I'm only giving it to you. So I haven't put a time on it because I know some of you are not pregnant yet. So there isn't a time on it. I ask that, look, you know what, if you want to share it, you can share it with friends. But I haven't put a timeline on it. So it's Birth Matters. I will send you all an email with all of the details and the code as well. Alexandra, you are welcome. Thank you for your time. Hopefully being touched pregnant soon. Good luck. Have fun trying. Thanks, Alicia. It was really educational, things I did not think about when I had my first child. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was perfect. It definitely opened my eyes, made me more relaxed. Amazing. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Do keep an eye out on your email. I will send you an email with the recording as well as a couple of worksheets, questions for caregivers, and also any information if I can help support you. But otherwise, come and follow me over on Instagram at Belly2Birth, or go and listen to my podcast. We have a heap of free information on the podcast, so you can still follow me there. All right, everyone, have a beautiful night. Thank you so much. Please stay connected. I would love to have any feedback of what you thought of tonight's webinar. Good night, everyone.